The DT, so I understand, so everybody understands, on the agenda was to consider going into closed session.
No, special session, which is, I don't even know what that is.
Right. I guess that should have been closed session. You're already in special session. You're in special call meeting. But you're not, nobody's filed a motion to go into closed session. Obviously, I think item number 1 on the agenda is for discussions regarding approval of the proposed contract, and then to consider any votes on that. So I think the topic is clearly on the agenda. I think we're okay on the topic. We are limited to the topic that's on the agenda, which is that. Whether you waive any wanting to go into closed session, and I just recognize that it says special session, but if you're not going
Can you
into
define special session for me, though?
we're not going into special session.
There's a motion on the floor to consider and vote
You and I,
for the
after we get off the phone,
contract of Mr. Piscala. Do I hear a second?
the wording
Second.
of the agenda.
Motion is
Can you
second.
hang on just a
Wait
minute
just a
while we're
minute.
having
Wait just a minute,
legal
Dave, tell you
discussion?
what,
Because it
Maybe ask
says
me
to
something.
consider going into session for discussion, not to
So if that
decide where you're
motion-
going to discuss it.
So pretty much, if that motion to consider going into special session for discussion regarding approval of the contract, so pretty much if that motion is not going to pass, we're done.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, you can waive going into, I think what was meant to be special closed session, but it doesn't say closed session. But clearly the topic that's on the agenda is to discuss regarding approval of the contract. You have to identify your topic of what you're going to do, what's going to be on the agenda for a special session, which is you call the special meeting. I think that topic is clearly on the agenda. If you want to waive going into closed session, which it's not correctly identified as a closed session, but you're not doing, my understanding is nobody's filed a motion, so you're not doing that anyway.
But the whole thing is to consider whether or not to go into it to have the discussion. That's my thing. It's not that you're going to discuss it and you're going to decide where to discuss it.
Angela, you're not on this board or part of the EPB team. So
I know, but what I'm saying-
You can't really participate in the meeting.
Well, I'm contesting the agenda, though. I'm contesting the
But,
meeting.
I mean, yeah.
But I think the topic of approving the contract is clearly on the agenda. Now, the board can have that as the agenda and talk about that, or you can, obviously got the option to adjourn and call another special session.
Which would be the smart thing to do if you
Special
want to stay
meeting.
in legalities and compliance with open meeting.
What would you recommend, Ron?
Well, I think you can, the thing you're going to have is you can have, and I discussed this with somebody else outside of the thing that has kind of been held out as an expert of open meetings, and that person agreed with me that clearly the item on the agenda is listed. There were issues about whether you could discuss the contract in closed session or not closed session. There are recent cases, a very recent case that's on appeal, but that would have ruled in favor of, that the Attorney General ruled in favor of going into closed session, okay? That was the issue. And, but that case is on appeal, so you never know. I mean, the Attorney General could go either way on any of that stuff. If you're not going, and that was a totally different type appointment reappointment as opposed to appointment, so there were other issues in that case. But if you're not going into closed session, at least that person and I agree that the item to be discussed that is on the agenda is to discuss approving a contract for the superintendent. So I think that item is on the agenda for the special called meeting, which you have. It's clearly identified as item number 1. It's just whether you're going to discuss it in closed session or to consider discussing it in closed session or go into, stay in open session and discuss it. Because you don't have to have a vote to go in open session. The issue, so that's my opinion. You can proceed with your meeting. I guess if somebody wants to challenge that, it's not challenged as a open meeting issue. It would be challenged as a special meeting agenda issue. If it got challenged and I guess was ruled in favor of the challenger's issue, or, complaint, then, they could say the meeting was void because you didn't follow the proper agenda. The other option, so you take your chances on that. You heard what my opinion is about those chances. You can solve the whole problem by, what's today, calling another special meeting Friday, putting clearly on the agenda so nobody's got a gripe about it, that we're going to have, number one, consider the contract and, take whatever action you want to take on it. So that's two options. I can't.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the contract as distributed to the board this afternoon. It is time for discussions.
But you gotta have a second, on that.
It will be in public.
Wait, DT, you made that motion, but there's not a second of that motion. Oh, Marlon seconded? I'm sorry. I just didn't hear that.
We have a motion and a second. It's time for discussions. Anyone have any
I would like it on
discussions
record that
of the contract?
I think that this meeting does not need to be held tonight because I think that it is an issue with open meetings violation. So I want it on record that I feel like the intelligent thing to do would be to reschedule this meeting for Friday.
Why is that?
DT, if you were listening to what I said I object to this meeting because it is in violation of open meetings right now by the way you are handling this. That's why.
What is the violation?
Do what?
What is the violation?
By the wording of the motion and the way the agenda is written, the number one item was consider going into, you've got special session, which that should be closed session, and to discuss approving the contract. So,
Okay, we can
if
do
that
We
motion,
can do that.
excuse
We
me,
can do
let
that
me finish.
right
You
now.
asked me my objection, I'm telling you my objection. So, if that motion failed, we should be done
haven't had it
because
on
you
the
cannot amend. I'm still talking. You asked my objection. Let me finish.
He's the chairman.
And he asked
controls
Glenn,
the
you're not
meeting.
in this discussion. It's between me and
And
DT
when
right
he
now.
starts talking, he's
So
saying
anyway,
that.
no, I won't.
What are you supposed to?
No, I'm not, because I don't stand down for anybody. If he asks me a question, I'm answering it.
Right now.
As I
right here,
said, you are in
until this issue
violation of open meetings. So now you
Okay,
continue with your
I make a
violation.
motion that we go
Ron,
into
what's
a
the-
special
what's the-
sessions for discussion
If you were
regarding
listening,
the
Ron
approval
just said that,
of
but
a
I
contract
objected, so that was all I was
for the
doing.
superintendent of the GEPB. Do I have a second?
DT,
Do I have a second to
DT, you're
go
probably
into a
not,
special session? It doesn't say it private, it just says a special session. Do I hear a motion? Do I have a second?
DT, we've lost in your comments where we are. We have a motion and a second already. There was further discussion about whether that was proper or not proper. I've given you my opinion on the agenda. You are limited to items on the agenda in a special called meeting. Clearly, this is a special called meeting, all right?
Yes.
The issue was you were going to consider going into closed session, but I think clearly the topic of the agenda is the discussions regarding trying to approve a contract or not approve a contract to present
Well, there seems
for
to
the
be a
superintendent.
technical objection that if we don't go into this session, right?
Well, you're talking about just a meeting, open meeting, an open meeting, not a closed meeting.
No, we're going into a special session, which means we're going to open it up, have whatever discussion. We don't have to go into a closed session. We're just going to have a session, and then we'll close it and come back and vote.
You're in a special meeting right now. You don't have to vote to go in a special meeting. You're in a special meeting, special called meeting.
Yes, I got that.
All right. And item number one on the agenda was to consider whether you're going to go in a closed session or not to discuss regarding approving the contract. So
Yes.
my opinion is, if you waive going into closed session, which you called special session, that was really improper. So that could have been an issue, but it's not, you're not going into closed session. You're still just in your special called meeting. And item number 1 on the agenda, if you waive trying to do that, which it sounds like nobody's asked to go into
I'm suggesting that we
closed
go into
session.
the special session, we have a word or two, we come out.
No, we don't go into, you don't have a special session, you're in special meeting right now. A closed session is where you close the meeting. We've talked about not closing the meeting because nobody's filed a motion to close the meeting. You're just in your special meeting, and I'm saying item number 1 clearly is to discuss the contract.
Yes.
You don't vote to
And that's
go into
what I'm
anything else.
asking,
You're in
that
your
we vote
meeting
to
right
go into
now.
this. Seems to be a technicality. If we don't do it, we can't vote on it.
You're in your open.
Is that right?
You're in your open meeting right now.
What?
You are in your open meeting, open special called meeting right now. The other option you
Right,
got.
I know that.
The
And
other
I'm
option.
asking,
Look,
and I have made a motion to go into a private session for the purpose of discussing this.
that's where I've given you my opinion, DT. There could be issues with the closed session, all right? And, my recommendation is you do it in open session, okay? And DT's now made a motion to go in closed session. My recommendation is that you just stay in the open session, which is where you are right now. You don't go into closed
Okay.
session.
We done got a second on that, right?
No,
To discuss the contract.
there's been no seconds about going into closed session.
Okay, I withdraw that motion. What do you recommend we do, Ron?
Well, the other option you got, because now there's been a lot more confusion than there should have been probably, is the option to clear up the question, to avoid any challenge of an agenda issue or a closed session issue, is simply to recall a special meeting and be done with it.
What is the violation of the law here that would cause us to not do this?
I'm just saying, we've talked about, you got special session on your agenda, but you're not going, I think you meant closed session, but you're not doing
I
that.
didn't say, it just says special session. It
You
doesn't
already-
say what it's for,
Yeah.
except to discuss it. A special session can be an open session.
Right, you are in a special called meeting right now.
Yeah,
But the
and we're
special-
going into a special session to discuss.
But the special session pursuant to the KRS 61-810 is reference to closed sessions, not special
Okay.
sessions.
Okay, if that's what we're doing, we're going to go into a closed session.
No, my recommendation is don't go into a closed session, discuss it openly.
Let's reschedule for Friday. I'm available.
Oh, good
Me
grief,
too.
guys. This is
At
such a
least maybe we can be
technicality.
in compliance.
I don't see any reason we can't go into a special session and sit here and talk. It doesn't say it has to be behind closed doors.
You don't vote to go into a special session, DT. You are in a special called meeting. They don't call it special session. You pursuant to the statute.
You
probably-
mentioned it has to do with KRS 61-810, which means that is a closed session, right?
That could be a closed session, but you're not in a closed session. You're just in a special called meeting pursuant to other
I know
statutes.
that.
And you
It's
don't,
here for the purpose of discussing this contract and voting on it. That's the only purpose of it.
I understand that, but you don't have to vote to go into any kind of session. You are entitled to call a special called meeting, which you did. And
I did.
item number 1 was to consider going in this closed session to discuss, but obviously you're going to consider going into closed session, in my opinion, the clearly topic of that, whatever the session is, whether it's open or closed, is to discuss the contract. So,
Yes.
but you're not going in, my recommendation is you don't go into closed session about that. I'm not saying that would be improper. I think it would be proper, certainly based upon the last ruling by the Attorney General.
Let's do it.
But you still.
Let's get this over with.
But you
We'll get a
still.
ruling from the Attorney General on it, whatever we need.
But DT, you still
We're
may,
not,
you still
we're not
may
trying
have
to
challenges.
avoid open records meeting laws here.
You still may have challenges, and I'm recommending to avoid any challenges, don't go into closed session. That's my opinion. You're still in special meeting. I'm not saying the meeting's over, you're still in a special meeting. The question is, do you continue on with this special meeting? And it's not because it says special session, that's not what you're doing. That statute's referring to a closed session. You're not doing a closed session, that's
I
just,
understand
that's
what
an
you're
improper
saying,
word.
but I don't know why we can't do it.
I'm telling you, I think the topic is proper for discussion in an open session because it's item number 1 on the agenda.
Okay, we can do that, we can come back and have the discussion in open session again, if we need to.
No, DT, my recommendations don't go into closed session.
Why is that? Why can't we go into a closed session?
That's the part of the open meetings. As I said, I think
We are discussing employment contract, and we should be able to do that. Now, if it's a requirement, we do it.
it's not a requirement. You have that option of going into closed session to discuss the appointment of the superintendent in this case. I think you
Okay.
can do that.
That's what I'm asking we do.
But I'm just telling you that, there's probably gonna be challenges to that. I can't
What's
tell
the
you, I
challenge?
can't tell you, I don't know what the challenge is till somebody challenges it. But it sounds like
I'm
there's gonna
not
be a challenge.
concerned about what somebody might do. I can't do what
Right.
everybody in the world. Let's go into special session, have this little discussion, and
DT.
we'll come back out and have it in public.
DT, it is not a special session. It would be a closed session, which I
Okay, a
recommend.
closed session. We have a closed session and do it.
And
Let's get this over with. We don't need to go through 15 dozen hoops to get through open meetings records law. We're not trying to cover up anything.
Well, DT, you have flagrantly disregarded open meetings laws multiple times. So we know that doesn't mean anything to you. As a board member on this organization, it reflects poorly on the organization when you do violate open meetings law. So you may
We
not
haven't
hear about that,
violated
but
them,
I
We're
do.
not going to. Now, I think what Ron is saying, in order to put the motion on to take a vote, we're going to have to go into this private session.
No,
and I
I'm not-
suggest
I'm
we
not
do it.
Said,
I'm not saying that, DT. I'm not saying you gotta go into closed session. All I'm saying is you don't
And
have to
Can
go
we
into
take a
closed
vote on
session.
this, item number 2, without going into this session?
And I'm recommending, obviously, item number 1 on the agenda was to have discussions about approving the contract. And then you're gonna have a motion about it. I'm just telling you, don't have your discussions in closed session. I'm of the opinion
That we can't
that
talk
you
in
could,
closed
but I'm
session
recommending you
without
don't to
an
avoid that
employment
problem.
contract.
The other option you got is, what Glenn suggested, is if you called another special meeting to get past all these issues, all this stuff here would be moot.
There's not any issues here. We would normally do this. This is just as straight as it comes from how it's generally done when you're hiring somebody.
well, DT, this is not exactly like just a regular corporation. We have to comply by open meetings laws set forth by the state of
Okay, well,
Kentucky.
let's go into closed session, have a discussion, come back out, we'll have an open discussion, the same issues, the same that we've just had, so that there is no issue that we have failed to cover.
Then what's the point in going into closed session if you go come back out and have the same discussion?
Because it seems that we can't take a vote unless we do.
No, it doesn't. He's telling you not. Oh, Jesus.
He's telling me not to take a vote because we haven't gone into special session.
No,
No.
DT, Ronnie has told you, he recommends you do not go into closed session. He recommends you have all your discussions in this open.
I am in agreement with that.
Okay, well, then we
I'm
don't
totally
need a
in agreement with
motion.
that. But apparently, we're not going to be able to vote unless we do.
No,
Is that right?
you were gonna consider going into closed session. Y'all have considered it, and I think you're not going, or at least I
All
thought
right.
that's where we started.
We consider it. I make a motion that we have all the discussions in public at this meeting, rather than to go into a private session.
But you can't make a motion on that.
You don't have to.
You don't need a
You
motion.
don't
You don't need a motion on that one.
You're just in the
Thing
session.
on the agenda.
All right.
You're at your
All right,
special
let's have
call
the
meeting.
discussion, and I'll go back, I'll withdraw the motion on the special session. I will go back and make a motion that we approve the contract with Dave Piscala for the superintendent of the EPB that was distributed this afternoon to the board. That's the motion. It's actually already been seconded. Can I get another second on it, Marlon?
The initial motion was, yeah.
Is that what the initial?
Can I get, Marlon, can I get a second on it again?
That, it's in the record already, DT. Amy's got
All
it.
right.
You made that motion and
Marlon.
All
Marlon
right.
seconded
Floor is
the
open to
motion.
discussion.
So it's up for discussion.
Well, I've got a couple of things that I'm just kind of not real keen on. I mean, number one, you're wanting to pay $166,000 a year and some change to somebody none of the three of you had any questions for in an interview. And then there's also the fact of, in there on 5% raises per year, when we have customarily been giving the raises, the board votes on those each year on their performance. So I don't think those 5% raises should be in there. I think that that should be done by the board, as it has customarily been each year with the employees as well as the superintendent.
Okay.
I don't think we had a contract before either, have we?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't know,
Further
I mean, I've
discussion?
only been here less time than you, Marlon, so I don't know, or whatever, about the same time or less time. But still,
Any further
if they're
discuss-
given,
any further
if the
discussion on
raises
the-
are based on their performance yearly by the board, that 5% automatic should not be in that contract.
I got that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a roll call vote. Marlon, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Glenn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Libby, how do you vote?
No,
DT votes yes, motion carries. With no further business on the agenda, I hear a motion to adjourn.
motion.
Motion, all in favor?
You gotta have a second.
Aye.
You
Second.
gotta have a second.
Meeting is
What?
adjourned.
Did we get a wait a minute, DT, did we get a second on the motion to adjourn?
We did not.
No, you didn't.
I thought Marlon.
Did we get a second on the adjournment? Yeah, I thought we did.
No.
No,
Do you second it, Marlon?
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
I think we had a motion and a second, and then do we need a vote?
Need a vote. I'm sure everybody agrees. Yeah, need a vote up to adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
My signal, motion carries. Okay, we are adjourned.